Welcome to yet another Cup of Linux, and today I have a special treat for all of you. A month ago I did a review on the magnificent Arch-based distribution Liquid Lemur, which attempts to bring Arch Linux to beginners. Today we have Brian, one of the lead developers on the show. Welcome, Brian. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, thank you.
And also I decided to invite Setkeh to join us as well. He does advanced Arch Linux tutorials on YouTube, and I thought it would be nice to have him join us as well. How you doing today, Setkeh?
Not doing too bad, thanks, mate.
All right, well, now I have Liquid Lemur open on my desktop here, and let me tell you, folks, if you guys haven't seen my review on this, you should check it out on my channel. This is a lightweight XFCE user interface that is beautifully designed. What really caught my eye was all the nice graphics and everything that were employed in this, the matching theme and everything. And I even had a few people that asked me what themes that this uses, and we'll get into that later. But Brian, please tell me how Liquid Lemur got started.
Actually, Liquid Lemur was started by a very talented developer named Ed Snyder, also known as Dragon Pale Moon, who had been working on a few other Linux projects and decided to go out on his own. And he actually wanted a distribution centered around Window Maker. And that's actually what Liquid Lemur started out on, was a Debian-based Window Maker distro. And some things happened, and he wasn't really able to keep going on with the project as he intended, and so he elevated Mario and myself to the lead developers of Liquid Lemur, that we should switch over to an Arch base. We wanted more of a bleeding edge but still stable. There were some issues with Debian at the time, and so we went with that and decided that was going to be what Liquid Lemur would be for the foreseeable future. And Mario and I then decided that XFCE would be a more attractive initial desktop to users as opposed to strictly a Window Maker based distro. And that's kind of how we got started. So the community that was Liquid Lemur was started by Ed actually a couple of years ago, and it just kind of grew from there. We had a community before we had a distro, so to speak.
You know, and the nice thing about this is this fits on a CD. And it has pretty much just about any software a beginner would really want to, get started with. I mean, you've got a whole plethora of nice applications here. You have 7-zip. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and read through the whole list, but I mean, you have graphics tools. You have the Chromium web browser included with this. You have multimedia players. Office tools, and everything here that anybody would really want to get started out with. So I thought this was well put together, and not only that, it was a nice bug-free experience for me when I ran through this one.
Yeah, actually you can blame Mario for the small CD size, because I actually wanted to blow up the CD size with more drivers and stuff, but for our initial release we didn't think that would be appropriate, especially, and He pretty much convinced me that not everyone in the world on the internet exists without a data cap, and a lot of users, that's kind of a big deal for them, is they want something smaller initial data cap and actually enjoy it once they have the distro. So we're actually doing our best to keep it at CD sized while still providing what I consider XFCE to be a much larger desktop environment as opposed to what I typically use on my systems.
Now, when I initially did this review, I had a number of people request that I do this, and correct me if I'm wrong here. This is actually a release candidate, isn't it?
It's not quite a release candidate. It's more of a, to be perfectly honest, our first attempt at building the distro, and really it was more of a test of our base Arch build scripts that Mario had done a ton of rewriting on the Arch ISO scripts that were created a while back, and so it was more of a, did we put together a sane base system that could actually boot up, and then once it booted up, did it actually run the GUI, did it have the background set, were the icons and themes in the proper place, did Cairo start automatically, and so it was kind of that thing, but it's kind of a double-edged sword. I shot us in the foot a little bit because there was so much publicity on Google Plus for Liquid Lemur because of the amount of followers I have and how much I spout off about it, that we decided, well, hey, why don't we just get the ISO out there so people can see it, and if nothing else, we'll get a ton of feedback if people even like it.
Well, I can tell you what. I see a lot of distributions being a show host on YouTube, and I can tell you what, you guys are definitely heading in the right direction with this. Now, I've looked at a lot of Arch spins out there, Arch Bang, which is good. I've also seen Bridge, but you know what? Out of all of them, I like this one the best, and this one is just a bass. Interesting. And you were mentioning earlier that you're going to take this even further. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we have a lot of things planned. If you go to our website, you can kind of see in the Lemur Apps tab, we have a few things that we're working on. Namely, we have Ape Man, which is pretty much what it was going to be a custom app for installing add-ons or additions, something similar to like what Chakra did, because it was a really good idea. And what it's actually going to be turning into is our, I don't want to say answer to Pac-Man, but our answer to ease of use with Pac-Man in a GUI, and kind of like a central hub that'll have the control panel. It'll have predefined package groups to be installed. For example, like if you want to install LibreOffice, it'll predefined install all of LibreOffice and set your locale and stuff like that. Utility scripts, things of that nature that we think Pac-Man is an exceptionally powerful tool for at the command line, but for new users, especially users who are coming directly from Windows or OS X or even Ubuntu, they're more in tune with a GUI interface, and we wanted to make that easy for them. They should be able to just open up the app, go, this is something I want, click on it, and have it be done, and not have to worry so much about, what command they entered in. Did they run it with the proper permissions, that sort of thing. We wanted to make it as seamless as possible. Also got our Conky tool that we're working on. A lot of users love Conky. I use it every once in a while, and they want to be able to have custom Conky configs that look cool and everything else. It's kind of a showboat type thing, and so we want to include that. We've been doing a lot of talking about our media suite. Mario and I have been trying to figure out the best way to go about it, but pretty much what we want is our own media player, our own music player, videos and stuff like that. We want to have our own little basic graphics program for viewing and editing and things like that. And the whole point is so that way we can keep the ISO size small, keep the system small, give basic app functionality that all users pretty much expect in a live environment, and in a base system. So we're not writing anything that's meant to replace more powerful things like, for example, VLC or MPlayer, but just things that provide the basic functionality that users want, that are really lightweight and that they can use as a fallback or just uninstall and install what they choose. Which is another thing we plan on writing, is a welcome app that'll walk a user through how to do all those things in an Arch way, both beginner methods and advanced methods.
Yeah, so this doesn't really close the door on anybody like myself that still wants to use Pac-Man from a command line prompt and that sort of thing. I also understand this will be fully Arch compatible as well, is that correct?
Yeah, we do not intend to at all replace anything in the base Arch system. Arch, they did a wonderful job. They saw simplicity. They have a simple system. It's a great base to build off of, and all we're really trying to do is take that power and simplicity and make it, kind of give an example of it to beginning users of what you are capable of, with just a few mouse clicks even, or just a few commands, as opposed to you know, the Arch installation is very, very simple for those of us who don't mind reading a wiki or who have been installing Linux from time immemorial. But for beginning users, it's a little daunting that they're stuck in a TTY. So we figured let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just, you know, add some air to it, as someone in the Mumble channel said once.
And that is a very interesting concept there. Now, something I'd like to point out, and maybe you might want to pick Setkeh's brain on this one, because he actually sets something up to where he now has a server set up to where you don't have to compile things from the AUR. He's actually got pre-compiled packages and that sort of thing, so that you can just actually install them. Tell us a little bit about that, Setkeh.
Okay, so like I started the mirror project, and basically, well, it started off just being a mirror, and then I had a couple of terabyte hard drives and a few spare NICs, and I slapped them all into one server, and started the whole project now. And what the idea was to have another high-speed mirror in Australia, because we've got very few here, and also I was looking at implementing the AUR, like you say. And I haven't done it yet. I have all of the PKG builds off the AUR now, and all I'm doing now is correcting some build scripts and things like that. But once I get that sorted out, yes, you're right, I will have a repo for Pac-Man, so you won't have to go to the AUR anymore or anything like that, and be able to install through Pac-Man, just doing a regular old Pac-Man-S, any AUR script. I'm also looking at having these being built every, the new clone of the AUR PKG builds done, say, every week, and having the build script automatically run the all the builds and rebuild the repos, say every Friday night or something like that, just so that you know, it's automated, and all of the bleeding edge software, like the Git, any package that comes from Git or BZR, you know, the latest development tree, always stays as close to bleeding edge as I can possibly keep it without, you know, having Google's capability of high performance clustering.
Now that's something that would be even more attractive to the beginners as well, because, you know, sometimes, you know, that can put some rain clouds of doom over somebody's head when they're thinking, oh geez, compiling, and that's something that a lot of beginners don't care to do. But I like the concept of having a graphic user interface so that people can download the applications that they're looking for and easily install them.
Yeah, and it's actually something, we did something similar with our own Lemur repo, where we took some packages that were in the AUR, and some packages that we created ourselves that would normally have gone to the AUR, and would have had to have been built from package builds using a AUR wrapper like Packer or something. And what we did was we actually built the packages on mine and Mario's local systems, and pushed them to our server for the repo, so now you actually can access the Lemur repo with just Pac-Man. We don't plan on replacing the AUR at all. We think it's still a very powerful tool. We do want to make it easier. The package manager, the GUI package portion that I'm writing with Mario is actually going to be using libalpm, just like Pac-Man does, and just like Packer does and everything, to be able to manage AUR packages and regular Pac-Man repo packages. Like I said, the goal is to have two modes, one for beginner users that's pretty much point-click, you know, explain what is actually happening, but not kind of a throw all this output in their face, and then an advanced mode, which is users who, they could very well use Pac-Man in the CLI if they wanted to, but they're just feeling lazy right then, or maybe they just want to save certain settings a certain way, or add flags to any package build that they load. So that stuff's on the horizon, but it's definitely a goal, and it's very similar to what Setkeh was saying. The key thing though is we're not at all trying to replace Arch. We're not trying to take away from the Arch base at all. One of the things that we do plan on doing is there's a few libraries and things that Mario and I are working on to basically build and then push to upstream Arch, so that way they can gain a benefit from it. All of our packages for that would benefit a regular Arch user, we do want to push to the AUR in their own package group, so regular Arch users can take advantage of it if they don't want to have to reinstall something or add our whole repo or anything like that. So it is how much are we actually looking at rewriting.
There's a question here on IRC that the Arch Noob was asking. What was your most decisive factor to switch to an Arch base for your distribution?
I can only speak to my own motives because Mario and Ed had very different ones. But as far as my motives, I was a very long-time Gentoo user, and when I started using Arch a little bit more recently in the last 2-3 years, I kind of saw Arch as a natural progression of what Gentoo and Portage could have been, because they both kind of give credit to the BSD port system, and so I fell in love with it. And it's always been very stable and very up to date, and that was never a problem for me. We had a Debian base. It was at the time very stable for what it was, but Ed had some problems with it, and there was an update that Debian pushed, and it goes to show how bad my memory is. I don't even remember what exactly the update was and what exactly it broke, but Ed had a big problem with it, and he kind of ranted a little bit in the forums. And Mario had just started using Arch, and he loved it as well, and so we said, why not just rebase off of Arch? Half the work is done for us anyways in documentation, and it's a sane setup that is really picking up speed, and it's worth the time to go and base off of that instead, rather than deal with a lot of outdated things, because let's face it, Debian users, being very bling edge, they like to stay where it's safe until something big happens and then they update. So we wanted to be able to provide the opportunity for a user to remain as up as possible without sacrificing security and stability, and Arch is just the logical choice in that regard, especially for its simplicity.
Another good point that was brought up here is, I know you mentioned that you want to try and keep the size as small as possible, but would you guys consider the option of making like a CD-sized version for those who want to go with the minimal set, and make an option for a full DVD installation that has it all?
That's actually something that Mario and I talked about when we were having our, I shouldn't call it an argument, but I'll call it an argument in IRC about ISO sizes. And basically what we decided was we want to keep to the CD-sized ISO, but for those users who, are more developers who want to tinker, or for people who want to do what little 3D gaming there is natively in Linux, we were going to put in a fully featured, full-on DVD-sized 4 gig ISO that will just have pretty much enough software and enough power in the system and customizability, the same as Arch, to really, you have to take several months to probably look through everything to read all the documentation on it. But we wanted to do it as a special edition type thing, possibly on an annual release cycle. Very similar to like what Sabayon did with their gaming edition. They have one, I believe, every Christmas now, and they have some other special editions that they do. But we wanted to do something like that because there are users who they don't care if caps just to them, but we can't support that all the time. But it's an option, definitely an option. Especially in the sense of being able to provide multiple window managers and desktop environments to users that they can just try out right there, and they can install and uninstall what they want later on.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea, and even the option of possibly letting the user decide which desktop they want to install and that sort of thing would be kind of neat as well. I don't know if that would be difficult to pull off, though.
Well, that's with what you were saying to me earlier. The way you're looking to to go the route you're looking to go down, that would be really cool. The other thing that I was just thinking then, for now, you can keep like GNOME, KDE, like you could smash together just a bunch of desktop environments to a CD, like into a release, and just make it a live CD that you can't install with like no packages for anything. If users wanted to go over the desktop environments the Lemur spin-off way, if you really wanted to, but I'm not sure if you would want to spend the time doing that.
Yeah, we're looking at a couple of options. There's something that we want to do with our installer that Mario might kill me for mentioning, but we wanted to do something similar to what SUSE Studio did. We just don't think that SUSE Studio went far enough. If you're not familiar with it, if you go to the SUSE Studio website, you can actually build in a custom ISO. You tell it what desktop environment you want, what packages you want. You can set up custom backgrounds and all that sort. You can run the check, see that it's sane, and then pull it down and put it on a DVD or CD or a USB stick. We don't think they went far enough. We think that if a user is going to be able to go into the website and pick all that stuff, why not just be able to install it remotely? I mean, sure, it takes a ton of server load, and it's a very complicated system and more easier said than done, but why not give it a shot and give the user the opportunity where, you know, if I'm in school and I want to play around with some distro, just SSH into my box, cache the ISO, and, you know, boot up my custom install right then and there, so when I come home, it's there and it's set up and ready to go.
Okay, and then another question came up saying that the Arch Noob was asking, I know that Arch is bleeding edge, and he's got the Band-Aids to prove it. And I have a few Band-Aids myself. But Arch has a testing branch. Would Liquid Lemur ever have its own independent testing branch?
For now, I'm going to say no, and the only reason why is because we are based on Arch Stable, which is very, very much bleeding edge. For users that that want to go beyond that and want to hemorrhage, then you know, they can add the testing repo, and it's probably something that we should include in the installer as an option to turn on automatically on boot, but we're just not quite there yet. The goal is to keep the system as stable as possible. We may in the future go ahead and add in certain things for users who want to get into the more hemorrhaging side of things and bleeding out to death, but for now that's not something that we're looking at, especially with we haven't even released a 1.0 stable yet. So,
well, the other thing with having a testing repo itself is that it takes a lot of maintaining to maintain a testing repo, and especially considering Lemur is backwards Arch compatible. I mean, I'm using all the Arch repos at the moment on both the VM that I've just installed and my live workstation system. I wouldn't actually necessarily see the benefit in Lemur having its own testing repo, except for adding more load to the devs.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where once you do, and I hate to sound like a business person, but once you do like a cost-benefit analysis, not that Lemur has really very much cost or makes money or anything like that at all, we don't, but when you look at the cost of time and headache and all that extra work to be done just for the testing side of things, and then you look at the benefit of what does the user gain or what does a niche user gain, it doesn't add up properly, at least to us for now. I mean, I'm not going to say no, but I will say no for now, and later on it's definitely a possibility. I actually learned a lot by working with some of the Sabayon devs on that project, which is Sabayon's a Gen 2 based distro, and dealing with their testing branch and everything. I got to see firsthand just how much work went into it, and we decided that of all the years of experience we have in Linux distros and everything on the Lemur team, that we didn't want to repeat any mistakes we saw elsewhere, but we did want to take the great things that we saw and add them in as best we could. So it's a slow progression. It's definitely a learning experience. I'm learning every time I get our repo. I learn something. So it's definitely definitely a lot of hard work, and just a testing repo for now would kind of be a little more than we're really prepared to handle at this time, especially with just Mario and I doing all the coding.
I would have to agree with you there. Now, there is an old saying that goes that if you can learn from your own mistakes, you're a smart man. But if you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, you're a genius. And let me tell you, from what I'm seeing here in front of me in this virtual appliance right now, you guys are geniuses. I mean, you guys have made a magnificent contribution to the Linux community, and I can see this being a wonderful distribution that could eventually get up into the top 10 on DistroWatch.
Yeah, and honestly, the person who really should get, I mean, 100% of the credit for just how successful we've been so far is Mario. He's the other lead developer for Lemur. We're kind of unique in the sense that most Linux distros, they either have a council of people similar to what Gentoo has that makes all the decisions in the direction for the distro, or they have one singular person at the helm and everyone else just kind of follows suit. Lemur, we've got two very strong type A personalities running the team, and so Mario and I, we have our fights and everything about things, but we end up agreeing on a lot more than we ever disagree about, and that's where our direction comes from. So like I was saying before in the channel unofficially that Mario and I have some differences of opinion on things. Like I prefer very lightweight desktop environments or window managers, like is my favorite one, and he prefers XFCE, and which to me is actually too heavyweight. It's too pretty for my personal taste, but we both agreed that if you want to bring in more users and show them an easy to use desktop, XFCE hands down. It's familiar, it's easy, it's extensible, and for as big as it is, it has a ton of functionality involved as well, and is still relatively small compared to others. So we're unique in that, but Mario did the 100% of the code involved for our installer. So anyone who loved installing Lemur, because it only took about 15 to 20 minutes, and that was mostly just copying the files over from the disk, you can thank Mario Steele on our forums. He put a lot of time and effort into it, and he's still putting a lot of time and effort into it, doing a update to the installer. Our lead artist is Tyler Melton, known as Digital Freedom 64, and we did something a little unique that I haven't heard other people do, but we gave him absolute creative freedom. We said, whatever you put out, even if we don't like it, we're going to include it. And he put together a beast mode desktop theme and icons based on Awoken, and those are included in our repo for people who want to download them. And it all came together very nicely, and so we're all really happy with it. There's a lot of things that we need to fix. Our bug tracker gets bigger every day, but you know, we're happy with at least the direction it's going now. It's almost its own living thing, so to speak.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing here is definitely a work of art. It is visually appealing. I think people are going to adopt this nicely.
I do want to go a little bit further with what the arch noob asked in IRC. Where do you or would you like to see Liquid Lemur in the distant future? So, distant future, we want to see Liquid Lemur available on Raspberry Pi, on Android-capable phones, on tablets. We want to work on our integration software that we're working on and planning out. We think that users ought to be able to have the freedom, that's our tagline, flowing with freedom. They ought to have the freedom to be able to be on their cell phone, and their cell phone should be able to run exactly the same type of system, or at least be a gateway to the system on their phone, or on their home computer, and check the status of it, update it remotely, that sort of thing. We want to be able to sync custom versions of the distro across networks, so that way if enterprise users want to do something, we'll have a piece of software that'll handle that for them and be able to put it together. We basically want to see a large-scale proliferation of not just Liquid Lemur, but Linux in general. I mean, all the tools that we use and all the tools that we write are completely open source. They're free to use. We don't hide our repos or anything like that. We don't have anything private, so people can follow the development. And we really just want to bring back that craving to the 80s in computers that is pretty much been missing because of patent lawsuits and stuff. So we do want to see it on all sorts of devices, and we're actively working on that and looking at options and planning out how we can possibly do that kind of thing. And the biggest thing is our number one goal is to make sure that users have the freedom to do exactly what they want to do. If they want to destroy their system, by all means destroy your system. If you want to turn it into a massive cluster, by all means you should be able to do that, and they should expect high standards from the developers on being able to provide that. I mean, it's a very simple thing. We've been enjoying Linux myself now for about 20 years, and that's the thing that keeps me coming back every time I think about installing something else for school or work or something. I always just say, no, I have the freedom to do this other thing. And I think that's the draw, and I think we should build on that, and I think users have a right to demand it. I mean, it's their system. They ought to be able to do with it what they will, and hopefully we'll be providing as much of that as possible. From our small team now to hopefully a much larger team later. And so that's where we'd like to see it, on all sorts of devices, being able to perform all sorts of different functions that really just ought to be. And that's it. Sorry for the long answer, though.
I would also like to see, Liquid Lemur and all that sort of stuff on the Raspberry Pi, and having done some work with the Raspberry Pi, I would like to, and not just the Raspberry Pi, but any other development platform that, or any sort of platform that I can help out with, it'd be good, because I'm only a few years behind you as far as Linux experience goes. I'm sitting on around about 10, 15 years, and I like doing new things with all sorts of stuff, so I look forward to having more conversations and offering my opinions where I can, even if I don't end up developing too much, but at least lending a hand, because like I say, I've only been using it for 4 days, but have had absolutely no qualms with it at all. And anything that's broken is being broken in Arch main, so and I'd like to say thanks for doing a great job on it.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure Mario knows, and Tyler as well.
And for everybody that is listening, I will have links in the show notes where you can get this operating system, and you can try this out in your virtual machines. You can even go as far as installing this on actual hardware. I have had the time to play around with this, and this seems to be pretty stable. I really like how this looks. This is a wonderful addition to the distros that I've seen out there in the Linux community, and believe me, I've seen a few distributions in just this past week alone that were really terrible. And this one is magnificent, and this is just a core base system. This is just the bare beginnings here, but from what I'm seeing here, this is going to turn out to be something magnificent.
Yeah, that's the goal, is to make it good, make it easy, make it so that way a regular user would have no reason not to try Linux.
All right, well, this has been an invigorating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today, Brian. And Setkeh, thank you also for joining me. This is definitely something I'm going to keep my eye on. I really like what I'm seeing here, and this is something I would definitely recommend. And as time goes along, and as you make new releases, I'll be happy to review them, and I'll also be happy to test them in my free time as well, because this is something that has come along that really gives the end user that wow experience, even with something as simple as this XFCE interface, the nice little panel you have set down on the bottom and everything. People are really going to adopt this well.
Thank you, and hopefully we can keep on going the way we've been. We're looking to try to grow and contribute as much to the community as we can. So, with that in mind, that's the pretty much the end goal right there. This is what we love doing. I mean, this is our dream job, and we don't need to be paid to do it. So we just like doing it, and that's how it's gonna be. So, the great thing is that everybody's liking it so far, from what I've seen, and hopefully we can keep giving them, good software and a good distro to base off of.
All right, and for all of you listeners out there, you can check out this distribution at liquidlemur.com. There will be download links, as I indicated as well. If you thought this was useful, please comment and subscribe. Google+, Facebook, and Twitter will keep you up to date every time I send a new video to the channel, especially the Liquid Lemur episodes. Also, this weekend, we are having a discussion on the Linux Zoo Crew, Saturday in the United States, Sunday in European countries. I'd like to invite you to join us if you can, Brian. That would be great to have you along with us, since you have a lot of dealings with Arch. We're going to have a questions and answers session, so I'd love it if you could join along for that one. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.